Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
and welcome to everyone. You can see that lots of people are joining in. All right, so there are about 70 people who have joined in already. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the ASEAN Regional Dialogue on the role of public procurement in achieving the SDGs. This is the opening session. I'm Monica from Q Design, and I will be your technical facilitator today. The chat function is available for this session if you wish to share any thoughts or interventions. We also have live language interpretation available today from English to Indonesian and Indonesian to English. To use the interpretation feature, please click on the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window and select the language of choice. Please note that the session today is recorded. If you have any questions about Zoom or require technical assistance, please feel free to raise your hand or drop a message into the Q&A box. I will now hand over today's MC, Liviana Zorzi. Liviana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you very much. And welcome all participants and distinguished speakers and guests. On behalf of UNDP and my colleagues at the Fair Business team, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this ASEAN Regional Dialogue on the role of public procurement in achieving the SDGs. This dialogue is organized by UNDP, the Fair Business team, in partnership with the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, COST, UN Women, Open Government Partnership, and Open Contracting Partnership. The Fair Business Project, or Promoting a Fair Business Environment in ASEAN, is supported by the UK government ASEAN Economic Reform Programme. My name is Liviana Zorzi. I'm project specialist here on transparency and accountability. The regional dialogue of today brings together government representatives from ASEAN countries, along with private sector leaders and civil society representatives interested in sharing their experience and learning more about public procurement and how that can support the achievement of a 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Today, we are going to have 3 sessions following the opening remarks that looks at public procurement for the SDGs, the importance of a system approach and collective action, technologies for transparent and open procurement. And the dialogue today will end at 6 p.m. Bangkok time, but we will be here again also tomorrow from 1 p.m. for 4 more sessions. But now let me introduce the first speaker for the opening remarks, Mr. Jaco Sillier, Manager of the Bangkok Regional Hub of UNDP. Over to you, Jaco.
Thank you very much, Liviana, and it's indeed a great privilege to be here. And let me also just welcome all participants and partners attending. I also want to thank the distinguished guests who have been and will be participating today, specifically the UK government, the ASEAN Economic Reform Programme, who has been partnering with UNDP on a number of years on our FairBus project. It is really a great pleasure to open this regional dialogue, which is set up to engage key stakeholders in public procurement, both from government, civil society, and private sector. The multi-stakeholder dialogue is at the heart of the collective action approach, which UNDP really believe is critical for achieving our 2030 agenda. Our objective is to encourage all stakeholders to consider public procurement more holistically, to see it as a vehicle to achieve various sustainable goals at once, rather than simply viewing it as a way for governments to acquire goods and services. In fact, the sustainable public procurement momentum has been growing since the 1990s, but its uptake and implementation still very much lags. Particularly, we've noticed also here within ASEAN. To this end, we recognize the need to collaborate the need for collaboration between all stakeholders, and the essential role of transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption in ensuring that taxpayers' money spent on government contracts deliver the best value for money and the value to society as a whole. Integrating transparency and a collective action approach in public procurement can make substantive savings for any country. For example, and we'll hear a little bit about that also today, in Thailand, a pilot project on disclosing data on public procurement contracts to civil society organizations under the COST, or the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, has helped the Thai government reduce its procurement costs. At the end of September 2020, the Minister of Finance in Thailand reported that $460 million in total cost savings have been made through the implementation of the COST approach. And this was done through 654 projects. To demonstrate the scale of public procurement, the Open Contracting Partnership estimates that global volume of procurement is about $13 trillion US, with countries spending approximately 10 to 20% of their GDP on government contracts. For ASEAN, this figure is collectively $140 billion each year. Therefore, in light of COVID-19, we have observed that there is even greater urgency of spending under the pandemic on certain areas such as delivering life-saving medical supplies and to spend on enhancing public services to invest in a better future. This includes stimulating sustainable green growth and improving the inclusivity and human rights within procurement. As such, today we have the pleasure of leveraging this forum and really to bring together a number of you to also discuss how we can mainstream various important initiatives by trying to answer 5 questions. First, how do we take a systems and collective approach to implementing sustainable public procurement? Second, how do we enhance transparency and accountability and manage corruption risks to prevent leakages? Third, how do we promote inclusivity in procurement processes? And this includes gender-responsive procurement and facilitating SMEs access to government contracts. Fourth, what are some of the new technology trends that help us achieve the various objectives of sustainable public procurement? And lastly, how can we combine a multi-stakeholder dialogue and engagements, such as what we're trying to do here today, to ensure all key stakeholders can share their knowledge and experiences and best practices? We very much look forward to identifying these areas for further multi-stakeholder collaboration. And as Liviana mentioned, we hope to do this both today and tomorrow in the various forums that we will have. As I end, I also really want to thank many people who have been supporting this initiative and will be participating in this event. Apart from our fellow speakers that we will hear from, I also want to thank Rowenda Candice Ruiz, who is the Executive Director of the Government Procurement Policy Board under the Government of Philippines, and also a member of the ASEAN Secretariat. Also want to thank Katja Bazar-Rosen, our Southeast Asia Regional Director for the Economic and Trade Policy under the UK government, and specifically many government representatives who are here from Thailand, and including the Controller General Department, from the Ministry of Finance, from Indonesia, from the Procurement Agency, Kpis, and from the Philippines, from the Government Procurement Policy Board. There's also many partners who are helping and participating here, including UN Women, the Open Government Partnership, the Open Contracting Partnership, Cost Infrastructure, Transparency Initiative, United Nations Environment Programme, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as UNODC. Specifically, as I also close, I really want to thank the UK government, the ASEAN Economic Reform Programme, for participating in this partnership and this very exciting project that we've been running for a number of years. Let me end just by saying that it is clear that citizens are demanding more and more that their governments, but also the private sector and those working within civil society, should be more transparent and accountable. It is clear that transparency significantly reduces corruption, but also more importantly, it can be a vehicle for accelerating all our joint efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We look forward to learning together how we can achieve this together. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the rest of the event. Over and back to you, Lilian.
Thank you, Jaco. Thank you very much. And now for the second speech of his opening remark, we are actually gonna show a video message from Ms. Rowena Candice Ruiz, the Executive Director of Government Procurement and Policy Board of the Philippines, but also a representative of the ASEAN Secretariat. She is here with us today, but for some technical issues, she will be showing her video message to us. So over to the technical team for the message. Thanks.
Good afternoon to all our participants in today's Regional Procurement Dialogue. Allow me to first extend my warm greetings of gratitude and appreciation to the United Nations Development Programme, the Government of the United Kingdom, and the ASEAN Economic Reform Programme for providing this digital space for a region-wide sharing with colleagues and champions of procurement reforms. Today's event is but a testament of our enduring aspirations and relentless passion towards creating value through public procurement. Globally, public procurement accounts for 12 to 14% of an economy's gross domestic product. That alone provides a macro perspective on the sheer power and influence of public procurement, how it can readily shape and design our future, how it can serve as an important catalyst for the promotion of our sustainable development goals. 6 years ago, in 2015, the United Nations heralded the call to action for nations, the international community, civil society, and the private sector to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, or 9 years from now, all people enjoy peace and prosperity through the adoption of the 17 global goals or the Sustainable Development Goals. Our gathering today is perhaps part of our answer to that clarion call for action, as we recognize the role of public procurement as a strategic and dynamic tool in creating values that would address a range of social needs, be it in the field of health, with the Health Facilities Enhancement Program, deployment of vaccines and doctors to the Borders Program, in education, with the Last Mile School Program, Social Protection Program for the poor, vulnerable, and disadvantaged, job creation through the Employment Facilitation Program to reach the poor, unemployed, and displaced workers, and National Greening Program to mitigate climate change and ensure environmental resiliency. And as we have all seen with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, now more than ever, we need to build on our public procurement systems and processes to create a strong framework for our COVID-19 rebound and recovery strategies. And as we anticipate and prepare for the next global disruption, we may need to likewise revisit our strategies and approaches in the achievement of our Sustainable Development Goals. Perhaps, just as we were shaken by the inquietude brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, it may prove useful for us to apply a dose of disruption to steer us further into action by harnessing opportunities for digital transformation, innovation, openness, financial inclusivism, and the rise of the alternatives with the sustainable public procurement, green public procurement, and circular economy initiatives to effectively capture the role of public procurement in reaching our 17 global goals. And as we rally together in this global partnership towards our Sustainable Development Goals, we can, through this forum, with its robust program, diverse selection of speakers, and engaged participants, create our own partnership, be it regional and even global-wide, towards strengthening, enhancing, and elevating the role of public procurement. Together, we can steer the dynamic evolution of public procurement as a key entry point for the realization of our 17 global goals, because how governments procure reflect policy directives, how governments procure formulate strategic priorities, how governments procure inevitably impact the way the world consumes. Again, a pleasant day to all, and thank you for making a difference today.
Thank you very much to Ms. Ruiz and for this message, and you will have also the chance to meet her in the future sessions today and tomorrow. And now the final speech, last but not least of these opening remarks, is provided by Ms. Katja Bazar-Rosen, Southeast Asia Regional Director, Economic and Trade Policy of the UK government. Katja, over to you.
Thank you very much for that very warm introduction. Distinguished colleagues and guests, it is a real honour to be here today on behalf of the UK government and to be supporting this important work with our ASEAN and our UNDP partners. The UK is a global leader and supporter of transparent and sustainable public procurement, and we have long recognised the potential of public procurement to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, the UK has a Contracts Finder website and has made it a requirement for all in-scope government bodies to publish public procurement opportunities and contract awards above a certain monetary threshold. This tool makes procurement more transparent and easier for small businesses and charitable organisations to do business with the public sector. In addition, the UK has introduced government buying standards to ensure we are buying more sustainable and efficient products and to try to reduce the impact of our purchasing on carbon emissions, on waste and on water usage. We continue to reform our public procurement processes to make them more transparent, simpler to navigate and better aligned to the UK's social, ethical and environmental priorities. And this is detailed in the UK's Green Paper, Transforming Public Procurement, which was published at the end of 2020 and can be found online if anyone is interested in that. Internationally, we have been supporting governments around the world in their pursuit of public procurement reform and digital transformation. We are pleased to have been able to support the UNDP in this area over the past several years through the FairBiz project that we're here to do and we'll be discussing over the next couple of days. Through the partnership with UNDP, we have worked with countries across the ASEAN region to promote more transparent and efficient public procurement systems to enable businesses, whether SMEs or international companies, to access government contracts on a level playing field. We recognise and we echo UNDP's emphasis on the need for a collective action approach to public procurement reform, using multi-stakeholder collaboration to strengthen transparency, citizen participation, inclusivity, and even digital technology adoption in public procurement. Finally, I wanted to conclude by saying that as ASEAN's most recent dialogue partner, the UK is extremely pleased to be here. I truly look forward to following the discussion over the next couple of days to see how we can ensure public procurement delivers value for money and contributes to the SDGs. And we look forward to working with the ASEAN countries on this journey after the regional dialogue event. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Katja. Thank you actually to all of you for your welcoming remarks. And we are in time to proceed also to session one. Session one is on public procurement's role in achieving the SDGs. The moderator for this session will be Ms. Akiko Yamamoto, who is Regional Team Leader, Asia and the Pacific for the Nature, Climate and Energy team of UNDP. As an engineer and a governance expert, Akiko has been working on natural resources governance in the context of sustainable development for several decades. So it's my pleasure now to leave you in her good hands for session one. The session will last until 2:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to moderate the first session with 3 experts in the field on this important topic. My name is Akiko Yamamoto, Regional Team Leader of the UNDP's Nature, Climate and Energy Team for the Asia Pacific region. The Nature, Climate and Energy Team strives to support 37 countries in the region to build climate resilient societies through low carbon and nature-based solutions in order to meet their development needs and improve their livelihoods while safeguarding our planet. We highly rely on effective and efficient procurement in delivering all our results on daily basis. Let me introduce the three experts who will share their knowledge with us today. Mr. Mustaq Menon, Regional Coordinator of Unep. Let me see. Great, thank you, Mustaq. And Mr. Nicholas Panagos, Head of the MAP Secretariat from OECD. Thank you, Nicholas. And then lastly, but not least, Mr. Darko Pavlovic, Project Manager for the UNDP FairBiz program. Thank you, Darko. Okay, everybody's muted. Anyway, before presentation by the speakers, I'd like to start the session with a pop quiz. And not only as an icebreaker, but also to help us all, including panelists and myself, audience, to engage with the topics of this session and the overall theme of this regional workshop. Now, I don't know if the pop quiz can be ready. Yeah, okay, it's ready. So can you all please vote? The question number one, I don't think I need to, I need to read those questions, but just, pick one answer, just to show that which one you think is the one to go. And then it will give just a few moments, and then we'll share the results and correct answers once everybody's finished participating in this poll. I think I just need to be guided by technical assistance. So just let us know when it's ready. Did we have enough time? Okay, maybe let's then go to the results of the poll for question number one. Which SDG goal has the specific target on sustainable public procurement? The correct answer is SDG 12, got the most votes. Thank you very much for your knowledge and the awareness of the SDG. But we do, this is the theme of the session and workshop. Definitely the public procurement has relevance to all SDGs, and so no other answers are completely incorrect. But the most direct one is SDG 12. Question number two. What are the dimensions of sustainable public procurement? I'm very happy to see 100% correct. Yes, this is the answer C, is the correct answer. Environment, social, and economic. These are all the dimensions relevant to the sustainable public procurement. Question number three. Public procurement accounts up to what percentage of GDP in many developing countries? The correct answer is, this was a bit tricky, 30%. So it's definitely far bigger than we all think. Well, 14% of people got the correct answer. But so this is why, this kind of shows why it is so important that we pay attention to the public procurement, and then we all become very aware of the influence that public procurement has in the developing countries. And the last question is, okay, how much governments in developing countries spend yearly on public procurement? The correct answer is, there's actually no correct answer, but it's the closest answer. The correct answer apparently is 820 billion. So the closest is the 800 billion, which received the least votes. But it definitely is bigger in terms of volume than the majority of people's responses. So again, this shows how significant the public procurement impact can be in our future. Not just, not just for the actual procurement for that purpose, but in a much broader impact. So with that, I hope you kind of get the sense of the importance of this this topic today, and then I definitely learned a few few facts myself here. And with this objective session is really the setting the big picture in the context of decade of actions. Only 9 years before 2030, we should all play our role to achieve SDGs. In our actions, words, and financial decisions should be all well aligned with SDGs. The pop quiz, I hope, help us get the sense that the public procurement can potentially make significant contribution to SDG achievement. How exactly the public procurement is expected to influence SDG attainment in each country, and then make us think about what roles we can play, how we can align our actions, decisions better with SDGs as we engage in the public procurement one way or another. And now we have I have a pleasure to welcome those three resource persons who can show us, who can share with us their knowledge about exactly how these things can be done, and tools and assessments principles. Let me, and before I give the floor to the first speaker, let me encourage all of you, the audience, to raise your questions in the comment box, please. And if possible, or if you feel comfortable, please identify yourself through name and title or the country that you're from when you raise your questions. Well then, without further ado, Mastak is going to, from Unep, is going to introduce the Sustainable Public Procurement Agenda. Over to you, Mastak.
Thank you, Akiko, and thank you, everyone. So let me quickly share my screen. Okay, so good. So let's discuss on the public procurement from the sustainability or the SDGs point of view, that how it can help the SDGs. And that's where we are starting with the public procurement role in achieving SDGs as one of the key driver for innovations as well. Because as Akiko mentioned, that there is a huge volume of the money is behind the public procurement. So any innovations in any countries, even like suppose the example of LED batteries in India or LED lights, and it was very expensive, then they had a public procurement of millions of lights and the price went down dramatically. Or if you are looking for any alternatives to the plastics per se, or you're looking to the electrification of the transport sector per se, if you are looking for the green housing per se. So all these innovations are possible through the force of the public procurement. And then we look into that SPP or sustainable public procurement policies, they vary across the countries. So in some countries, even you find the green public procurement, though I will touch on the theoretical basis, but now it's taken as a synonymous. In many countries is a SPP, in some countries is still called the green public procurement, and their policies vary in a different ways, and we will touch on that. And also the looking on the scope is now widening. So initially, like sustainable public procurement was focused for a sort of a pilot experiences like a office furniture or computing equipment or then refrigeration. But now it has opened, or it is replacing the normal or traditional public procurement. And then also we have seen there's a lot of a capacity building across the different ministries, because public procurement may fall under Ministry of Finance or there are regulatory authorities. But now, because all the ministries or all the levels of the government, including the state and the local government, they are doing the public procurement. So there's a lot of capacity building and integration is taking place. And then there are still the challenges are there that many products, they become expensive if they are procured under the sustainable public procurement, and because of the lack of the production lines and the systems there. But as I say, the force of public procurement amount is there, that is breaking the barriers. And then also eco labels and top-down leadership is helping sustainable public procurement, as we always now see on the many types of labels, even for coffee, even for the detergents, even for the building materials, you name it. So that's really helping not only the raising the awareness, but also making it easy to the certification systems to get the green products through sustainable public procurement. And then private sector engagement, professionalism, and stakeholder coordination is now rapidly increasing into that. So how the sustainable public procurement is positioned in the SDGs. So as 12.7 indicator itself is on the sustainable public procurement. And SDG 12 is about the responsible consumption and production. And that's where, again, the 12.2, like on the 12.1 on the 10-year framework on the sustainable consumption and production has 6 areas, which are there on your screen. And one of those areas is, again, the sustainable public procurement. So in SDG 12, it appears 2 times, in 12.7 and also under the 10-year framework. However, this helps across all the SDGs because the procurement addresses the poverty issues, it addresses the healthcare, education, water and sanitation, life under the sea, life over the land, climate action, you name it. Now, coming to the theoretical dimensions, as we saw, the public procurement in its traditional way is not including maybe the terms of references which to address the environmental externalities. However, when this green public procurement came into the practice, especially from the European Union or many other countries in Asia, like Republic of Korea, Japan, and so on, then they had internalized the environmental dimensions into that. So basically, it was the life cycle analysis of the products, and that took place. But then when SDGs came into place, that was looking more on the also including the social and governance aspects of that. And that's where the sustainable public procurement evolved. And now green public procurement already in many countries' policies, they also more or less synonymous to the sustainable public procurement, including the social and governance dimensions into that. So as you already replied on this, that many countries' percentage of GDP is rapidly like increasing towards the public procurement. And especially if you look on the stimulus packages from the COVID or the green recovery and so on. So you can imagine how much amount of funding is in the public procurement. And in many countries, even the public procurement is for the stimulating the jobs market, the economic growth, the equity across the different social sectors. So how all these goals can be combined, that's where the sustainable public procurement plays a very important role into that. And that's where we look on the benefits. There are environmental benefits, as I mentioned. So for example, let's take the solar energy. For many of us, solar energy is a green energy. But if you do the life cycle analysis of a solar energy, you may find, depending where those cells are produced for the solar energy panels, the batteries, or all the equipment. If those equipment is not produced through the environmental or responsible sources, or the social responsible sources, including the child labor and so on, or including the impacts of mining, the silica and others, then and also the dumping of the panels, again, back into the environment, then even solar energy sounds green, it is not green energy. So that's where the sustainable public procurement helps to bring the benefits of solar energy as a green energy if that is procured under those environmental dimensions, economic dimensions, social dimensions, and the governance and poverty alleviation dimensions. So that's very important to understand how you reap the benefits of sustainable public procurement. So when we are looking on the different impacts, vis-a-vis internalizing that into the bidding documents, how you look at the objectives. So what economic improvement you are bringing through the sustainable public procurement, you can have various ways. Suppose you want to promote this local SMEs. So you have additional points in the bidding for that. You are promoting the local economy. So made in in local cities or made in the country, get the higher points into that. Similarly, with the reduced fuel cost, operation cost, and so on, that can come into here. Environmental benefits, again, you're looking on the natural resources, or in the simple terms, the footprints. If the environmental footprints are reduced and the resource efficiency is increased through the TUR you are putting into the bidding documents, you will achieve the environmental benefits. Similarly, on the social risk and the corruption, the governance, the child labor, the gender, the equity issues, they all can be the part of the bidding documents when you are procuring, as I already stated, the example of a solar energy. So in some of the countries or the cities, there are very good case studies. And I just, because of the time, only brought one case study from Belgium, but there are many case studies even from Korea, Japan, India, and Thailand, and so on. You can look into that how the governments, whether it be the local governments, national governments, are working through sustainable public procurement to achieve the sustainable development, and that's where the SDGs are. And now quickly, I will go into some of the dimensions of the sustainability that is achieved through the sustainable public procurement. And it varies from the individual level, like suppose changing the end user consumption patterns like green consumption and so on, to the organizational level, like a management of the purchasing interface with the other functions, and then buyers and supplier level, and then to the supply chain network, and through the markets. So the one important point here is that how you really look on the market readiness, because you may want to procure something, but that may not be available in the market, and that's where the cost challenges are there. So you have to have plan in advance, and you sensitize the market. That government, let's say, is going to open a bid for 3 million LED lights at the price of 20 rupee per LED light. Then market will take 6 months or 1 year really to have their industries, factories, supply chains, everything ready there. So it is very important that when you are trying to go for the sustainable public procurement, you have to sensitize the market so the market readiness is there, because even the private sector chains are to be the green supply chains and so on. And for the economic dimensions, again, you are looking on the different costs, or whether be the operation cost, whether be the benefits reaping by the local job markets and so on. So again, it's very important to to raise the awareness first, rather than directly issuing the bidding documents, and many people may not be ready. So the readiness is the most important part, whether it be through policies by the government readiness or the market readiness. That is very important to look on that. And similarly, on the social dimensions of that whether you are looking for to address even the gender issues. So suppose in many SMEs, let's say textile SMEs, I was working when a project in one country, hardly we find the gender into the textile like a production there. So how the governments can help to order the textiles through the public procurement, to putting the additional points, the textile factories where the number of the female workers is, let's say, X number. So this is very, again, important, that how you raise the social dimensions through that. So there are quickly some of the examples of the Unep projects. In Vietnam, we have quite an intensive project on the sustainable public procurement, starting from the policy support to the market readiness support to the incentive mechanisms and so on. And the Thailand, which is a very mature project now, and Thailand is rather leading in ASEAN region on the sustainable public procurement, or they call it a green public procurement. That is very important to look into that even they have a green cards, eco labels, and so on. And these are some of the policies that was changed in the Vietnam to bring the green public procurement in the national fora. And in the Thailand, they established quite intensive technical committees initially to start with, but then they created the green card criteria, and then also bringing the levels and so on. So green public procurement, let's say in National Highway Authority, in housing and so on, that's there. But the PCD, Pollution Control Department of under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, is leading on the guidance and so on. And then again, Unep also tries to bring many examples to support the capacity. Like this is from the Korea, and Korea is Republic of Korea is one of the established countries with the green public procurement up to even the local level. You can see on the different laws here, I put on the articles where even it goes to the local government ordinances for the green public procurement and so on. And then there are a lot of publications, guidance, guidelines, reviews, surveys Unep has been producing over last 2 decades at least, which can be very useful for starting the sustainable public procurement. Thank you very much. Back to you, Akiko.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ak. It was a really powerful message, to start this session. Thank you. I think we've heard how powerful and how far-reaching the sustainable public procurement philosophy can be or is already, and then its potential influence on the SDG achievement. We don't have to wait or rely 100% on the renewable energy project to promote the renewable energy. Just about every other project can even do the market, they send the market signals, very strong market signals with the significant volume for that matter to achieve the SDGs. Thank you very much. Then next, let me go to the next presentation, which is by Mr. Nicholas Penagos, head of the MAP Secretariat from OECD, sharing with us the methodology for assessing procurement systems, MAPs. Thank you, over to you.
Thank you, Akiko. If we may publish the, thank you. So what I want to here an echo. What I want to present today is really building on the great presentation that we just heard. How can we properly understand whether a country is going on well in understanding and in implementing sustainable public procurement? And with this, I want to present briefly on how MAPS works and how MAPS can be useful also for achieving sustainable public procurement goals. So on the next slide, we will see what the scope of MAPS is. Public procurement systems can be assessed through MAPS, which is a universal tool. It can be used for any level of government, be it a city, a state, or a country, any public procurement system in any country. So that's very important, that it's regardless of the level of procurement, of development of a country. Public procurement systems may be assessed through MAPS. MAPS was revised in 2018 exactly to do it a universal tool, so that not only developing countries, but also any type of country, from a fragile state, a small island, through a developed economy, can use MAPS to diagnose their procurement system. It's a reform tool, so really that's the objective of the tool, to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the public procurement system, ensuring integrity and transparency in the use of public funds, and also, very importantly, encouraging dialogue among stakeholders, which we understand it's not only government, but also civil society, private sector, academia, media, etc. All those stakeholders that have to do with public procurement. And it uses a comprehensive list of indicators which are objective. So assessors use criteria to assess whether a criteria is met or not. And indicators are established as an aspirational standard which countries should strive to achieve. It engages various stakeholders even within the assessment itself. And there's quality assurance mechanism that has been built within MAPS that I will elaborate a bit more later. Go to the next slide. MAPS is a part of an assessment system. There are several tools which governments use to assess economic and financial governance. MAPS is just one of them. You might have heard also for example, for assessing tax systems and revenue systems for government, there's TADAT. For assessing public financial management, there's PIFA. And MAPS is the one that is really recognized as the universal tool to understand how procurement is working in a country. Next slide. So what does MAPS assess? Basically, we understand that, first of all, there's the need to assess value for money. Value for money, understood in the really broader sense, not only of achieving economic, efficient and effective ways of procuring goods, works and services, but also that this is done in a sustainable way. And that's one of the key aspects that was introduced in the latest version of MAPS. It also looks at the transparency of the system, transparency in the disclosure of policies, of frameworks, but also of the decisions that relate to public procurement processes, be it from the planning stage through the contract implementation, that those are comprehensible, that those are accessible to all parties, and that is done in a timely manner. The fairness of the system, especially understood that it's free from bias, that it ensures an equal treatment to all suppliers and to all parties that are involved in the procurement system, and that decisions are taken accordingly, thus ensuring integrity. And finally, good governance, recognizing the importance of the wider governance context on the way public procurement is conducted and how reforms to procurement are implemented, which is at the end, the objective of MAPS. Next. So we were just discussing, and I think the poll was very appropriate for this, and also the last presentation on MAPS and the SDGs. So right now we're focusing on achieving the SDGs. I think we have understood that there's a direct link between MAPS and how the indicators were set up, and two of the SDGs, which is of course SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production, and SDG 16 on developing effective, accountable and transparent institutions at all levels. But of course, we understand that public procurement is central and crucial to achieving any SDG. If we are speaking about better sanitation or better education, the only way governments are able to materialize that speech of a policy is through public procurement, is through buying something from, in general, the private sector, be it a new sanitation facility, desks for teachers and students, the books, food for the students. So any of those products public procurement is needed to deliver those goods and services. But of course, if we speak of direct links, again, we see that SDG 12 and 16 are the ones. Next. So we've spoken a bit about the methodology, but what really is the methodology? And I will try to describe this, of course, very succinctly because of time. Feel free at any moment during the session to pose any questions, or later we'd be happy to take any question that you have. The methodology is composed first of a core, what we call the core methodology, which is really the one that is used to assess the whole of the procurement system. It should be applied completely, and it's made up of 4 pillars. The first one dealing with the legal and regulatory and policy framework. It has 3 indicators, as you see. For each pillar, there's a number of indicators and sub-indicators, and within each sub-indicator, there are really some questions that are objective criteria to understand whether a certain thing is met or not. So first, the legal and regulatory framework of procurement. Second, the institutional framework. So all the institutions that are dealing with procurement, not only on the regulatory aspect, but also on the public financial management, and even from the institutions that are procuring, so procuring agencies, which is their mandate to procure. How are they able to procure? Are their staff well trained? Do they receive further capacity building opportunities? Is there any help desk so that they can raise questions if they have questions about how to do procurement in the proper way? Number 3, procurement operations and market practices, understanding how private sector and government interact and how procurement operations are happening in reality. So for this, assessors take a sample of procurement and understand for each of the procurement records if all the information was available, if everything that was set up as a best practice, possibly in the legal framework and in the institutional framework, is really happening in reality. When you go and see a tender, are all the documents published? Was the contractor selected through a competitive process, efficiently, transparent, with a transparent process? All of this is taken care of in pillar 3. And finally, in pillar 4, it deals with accountability, integrity, and transparency. So it relates to the anti-corruption framework of the country, also the audit and control institutions, so internal and external control of procurement. And finally, all that relates to how civil society is engaging with public procurement. Are they able to monitor? Are they able to participate in the different stages of the procurement process? Next, we have also some supplementary modules that you see there. There are 2 which are already live, which are sustainable public procurement and professionalization. There are some that are planned, and we hope next year to have them ready for use. And we will focus, and I will go a bit more in detail about sustainable procurement in the rest of the session. So very briefly, I spoke about the quality assurance process, and this is ensured through a technical advisory group of international experts for each assessment, and also through the MAP Secretariat, which is housed at the OECD. And we give support to all users who want to plan and manage a MAPS assessment, start building a concept note to describe the objectives and logistical arrangements for the assessment. And throughout the process, any questions that they have through to the final report, which we also ensure that it has the quality and has conformed to the methodology and can be published and disseminated. Next. So really, a quick example from Lebanon, before passing to sustainability topics per se, is that we understand MAPS again as a reform tool. So for example, in Lebanon, they have experienced a multi-factor crisis in the recent years. They understood that procurement was at the core of those problems and other things they needed to solve. So at first they said, what do we need to do? We need to understand and diagnose what we have so that we can also understand what we need to reform and where we need to set the priorities. So they used MAPS for that. And MAPS was also important to build consensus around something that was evidence-based and that the stakeholders could agree on. Using maps and using the elements that maps informed, Parliament approved a new procurement law that is now established in Lebanon. Next. So sustainability in the core maps framework, as we were saying, there's the core methodology that is applied in general for a country, and then countries can deepen their understanding through the sustainable public procurement module. So sustainability in the core maps framework is found basically in two indicators. In indicator 3 is sub-indicator 3A is dedicated exclusively to sustainability and assesses whether a national sustainable public procurement strategy is in place, whether the legal framework allows for those sustainability considerations, and whether there are tools in place to operationalize sustainable procurement. And as I was describing, sub-indicator 9A through 9C, which is that check of reality of what's happening with procurement processes. It looks at those procurement processes and really tries to understand whether those aspects that might have been described in the legal framework are really happening in those processes. If, for example, there's the sustainability criteria are used in a balanced manner, if contract clauses include sustainability considerations where appropriate. Next. So the sustainable public procurement module, just for you to take away from today, it should be used in conjunction with or after a core maps assessment, because it uses a lot of the findings of the core maps to understand how sustainable public procurement is happening in the country. It follows the structure of the core maps, so also with a set of pillars that we're going to see right now. It has 12 indicators and 29 sub-indicators analyzing sustainable public procurement in depth. And it has a number also of quantitative indicators that we ask for, 6 at a minimum, and there are other 29 recommended as quantitative indicators. Next. So again, trying to see the value of this tool, there's an example from Norway. Norway undertook both the core maps and also the sustainable procurement maps. This was done by the OECD's infrastructure and public procurement team as an assessor. And this really informed the country into which were the things that they needed to solve and to address. Of course, we receive many times the question of, are there really things that Norway needed to solve and address? And the answer is yes. Even for developed economies, which might have many best practices already implemented, MAPS was able to identify certain things related, for example, to training of the procurement officers, to really the implementation in procuring agencies along and across all the country, how to do this properly. So based on this, the procurement agency in Norway launched some weeks ago their sustainable public procurement action plan, which was in a great way informed by the findings of MAPS. And this is what we would want to see in other countries, really the use of MAPS in a very practical manner. Next. So in a nutshell, and I don't really want to take too much time because all of this is on our website, but really for you to see what is included in the sustainable procurement module of MAPS. Again, it's based on those 4 pillars dealing with and going deeper into sustainability. So as a country has analyzed how procurement works from the legal perspective, the module really goes deeper into sustainability issues in that legal and regulatory framework. Pillar 2 is the institutional framework for sustainable public procurement. So really, countries might, for example, have not only some functions within the procurement agency, but also within the Ministry of Environment. It might be one of the institutional setups for sustainable public procurement. And this pillar tries to understand whether those there's coordination among those responsibilities, whether the staff understands and is well trained to handle sustainable procurement, whether those budget laws and accounting procedures are in line with the sustainability. Next. And also whether there's information in the procurement system about sustainability. Pillar 3, again, on the reality of what's happening, market operations, and how the private sector is also contributing or not to achieving sustainable procurement. Finally, Pillar 4, it's a shorter version of Pillar 4, understanding that in general, most of the topics dealing with anti-corruption, audit, and the role of civil society, how it works in general for general procurement should also work the same for sustainable procurement. If it's not, then the assessor should describe any differences. But Pillar 4 basically deals here with how civil society is supporting sustainability and how the audit framework is analyzing sustainable procurement. Next. And just to give you a snapshot, because we don't have the time to go into each one of these topics, is really how it works in the criteria. So we were saying that indicator 9 of this module has deals with the reality of procurement processes, and it has 3 sub-indicators that go from the planning stage through the contract management stage of a procurement process. Next. And if we go deeper into one of those, sub-indicator 9A, these are the assessment criteria that you would have for as an example for one of these sub-indicators. So the assessor should look into, for example, if needs analysis, risk assessment, and market research guided proactive identification of optimal procurement strategies to pursue sustainability considerations. Or the last one, if unnecessary purchases are avoided. So there's really a whole variety of criteria to understand if the country is able to achieve a planning that is taking care of sustainability topics when procuring. Next. And here's our contact info. So feel free to follow us on social media, or also to pose any question that you have. We'll be more than willing. We have a help desk function where we can answer any question, and we would really want to hear from you so that there's more involvement of Asian countries that I think are already taking into consideration maps and using maps as a tool to understand their procurement systems. And we will really look forward to having one of those countries undertake after that the sustainable procurement module. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I found it very, very useful to have, after that we are introduced to this philosophy, it's followed by this very practical tool that's already, being tested, being applied for so many years by many governments. It's, when we try to introduce something new or something innovative, it's also very important to understand what already exists and what's working in this field, to strengthen the public procurement. I think we are talking with the assumption that the public procurement is strong enough that we can put the SDG layer on top of it and then to move forward. So we have to have a strong public procurement foundation in the first place. And then not only the maps can be is an example of such methodology, standardized and well tested and systematically applied. But also I can see that the maps is also evolving to include all these different sustainability criteria and indicators. So that was very useful. Thank you very much, Nicholas. I think we have questions that might be coming to you later, but then we'll park it until the Q&A session, and then we'll move to Darko from the UNDP Fairways program, and he's going to present us the public procurement linkages to all the SDGs. Thank you very much. Darko, you're on mute. I still can't hear you. You don't look mute, but I can
You
hear
have to unmute your full, I mean,
yes.
UNDP one, not your personal.
Oh. Oh, the BRH? UNDP BRH needs to be unmuted?
Yeah.
I don't see Darko.
Darko, looks like UNDP BRH is on mute. So unless we unmute that,
Yeah,
I
BRH
don't think
has
we
to be
would
unmuted.
be able to hear you.
Darko is the one sharing the screen, right?
Right.
So he's connected, but we need to hear him.
Akiko, would you like to take a question?
Yeah, I can actually take a question.
Yeah.
Let me then, we have a couple of good questions. Oh, in fact, the list of questions is growing. Oh, great. Let's see. Let me just start with the first one. He says that, do the panelists, it's from Andrea, do the panelists know of any good examples where government is measuring the impact its procurement activities are having on relevant SDG targets? What SPP KPIs would you recommend for government agencies, organizations? It could go anybody, but then maybe, Nicholas, can you give a stab at this question, please?
Sure. So maybe I start with the second part, and it really focus first on what already is in the core maps and the sustainable procurement module related to indicators which are objective and reliable on how to assess if a government is implementing well sustainable public procurement, and what are the key elements that they would need to solve in order to make this better. I really also want to, on the first point that Andrea is asking on links or how to measure the impact of procurement on relevant SDG targets. I think there is, from what I've seen, there is some good work from Intosai and IDI, the Supreme Audit Institution Development Initiative, with some indicators for that's a bit more on the audit, but I think that's very relevant because it shows how an audit institution can monitor the implementation of first sustainable procurement, but also in general procurement topics and how they relate to sustainability and SDGs. So I would point to those two main sources of information.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I think there's another question related to maps from Magda. So let's see. Oh, I see Darko back.
I think I am back. Can you hear me now?
You are back and then we can hear you.
Yes,
well, then,
I'm so sorry. I didn't. There was some issue with technical issue. Okay, so I can start with the.
Yeah, no problem. Please, then Nicholas, you can take a breath and then
and then the next question after. Yes, thank you so much.
We'll come back to you during the Q&A session. All right, Darko, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let me just start. Well, thank you so much, and sorry for this little bit of a technical issue. I will be talking today about how public procurement links to all of the 17 SDGs and how it can be actually a very effective way to achieve the global goals. So when we talked about the public procurement is identifying what is needed, determining who is the best person to organize basically an organization to supply this need, and ensuring what is needed is delivered to the right place at the right time for the best price, and that is done in a fair and open process. So this is the definition of the public procurement, but it's actually not the primary objective, and this is just the primary objective of the public procurement, which refers to basically delivering the goods, services necessary to accomplish government missions in a timely, economic, and efficient manner. But for public procurement to be sustainable and effectively contribute to the SDGs, apart from achieving value for money, it also has to consider the life cycle of costs and benefits toward the organization, environment, society, and economy. So in a way, it's a much wider basically sense of looking at the public procurement from only looking at it from the cost side. So basically, this means that the procurement needs to accomplish a variety of objectives, such as sustainable green growth, promoting access to government contracts for small and medium enterprises, support women-owned and led businesses, support marginalized groups, innovation, and also integrate standards for responsible business conduct and human rights. So these are all objectives of the public procurement which can support government development policies in addition to the primary objective of the procurement. So how transparency and anti-corruption serve as enablers for sustainable public procurement. Our project promoting fair business environment in ASEAN, which is funded by UK government, the ASEAN Economic Reform Program, believes that key to sustainable public procurement is transparent and open procurement that is using collective action approach, which means collaboration between and partnership between government, civil society, and the private sector. So we actually believe that each part of the society can benefit from transparent and effective public procurement. So as you can see, I mean, when it comes to public sector, the public procurement can support better options of goods and services needed to help government to do their jobs due to the fair competition and value for money. For citizens and communities, they can actually receive better quality of public services, and private sector can actually easily access information and bidding opportunities and have a fair chance to win bids. Why do we need effective and public procurement? So all the parts of the society, or what we call collective action approach, or whole of the society, including governments and citizens and many businesses, and basically businesses and private sector, can really benefit from effective public and transparent public procurement. So for governments, they rely on public procurement to acquire goods and services that will equip them to actually build the capacity and fulfill its responsibilities to its citizens. So these responsibilities can range from basic services such as, for example, water, sanitation, education, healthcare, tax collection, and also like including building of the large-scale public infrastructure roads, like infrastructure projects like roads and airports. Citizens can also use and be an end users and beneficiaries that they can enjoy the effective government services, such as the quality education and healthcare. And society can also benefit from convenient mobility and transport of goods via infrastructure, enabling commerce and other opportunities. With businesses, they can really rely on fair competition against other vendors to trust that their investment into quality goods and services will bring income and profit to them. So what are the key principles of public procurement? Though it's transparency, its integrity, efficiency, value for money, participation, and fair competition. So these key principles of the public procurement actually can guide public procurement in a way towards sustainable public procurement, but also towards really providing and enabling the space for public procurement to have this kind of like approach where basically the businesses can try, where the government can also provide that kind of like trust for the citizens. And at the same time, the civil society can also play a very important role as the watchdog function of the society. So when it comes to transparency, transparency in public procurement means that procurement process is undertaken publicly and visibly according to the prescribed rules and procedures. And the rules and procedures are stated from the beginning in an open and transparent manner as to actually limit the discretion of officials to meddle in the process. The provision of system of monitoring and enforcing applicable rules also leads to a greater transparency in the procurement process. So for example, examples from the transparency could be open data disclosure from all stages of procurement cycle, bidding opportunities that are actually published on the designated portals, etc. Integrity means in public procurement means use of funds, resources, assets, and authority according to the intended official purposes and in a manner that is well informed and aligned with public interest with broader principles of good governance. In practical terms, it means, for example, development of code of conduct to guide the expectations of both public and private sector stakeholders. It can also mean capacity building for procurement staff for managing integrity risks in procurement processes. Efficiency and value for money are closely linked. Efficiency means that is a very important element of public performance management, and it means that that actually contributes to achieving the value of money by reducing administrative and transaction costs and directing resources to support more complex procurement processes. So, for example, it could be an e-procurement, centralized purchasing, framework agreements, and others. For the value of money, we actually feel that, I mean, the definition of the value for money is that it refers to the optimization of total costs and ownership of the quality to actually meet the user's requirements. And it's actually aimed at maximizing the efficiency of procurement spending in delivering more value for the society. Participation actually has two separate components. One is potential surprise participation in the bidding process, which is actually regardless of nationality, promoting international trade. And the second one is around the civil society participation in monitoring the procurement process. These principles can be implemented through engaging in transparent and regular dialogue with business associations to inform them of procurement needs or to solicit feedback on accessibility of bidding procedures. Also, it could actually be like, for example, enabling citizen monitoring of procurement with established feedback mechanisms. Fair competition is actually referring to rigorous competition that where all bidders are treated fairly and equally. So that means that a sufficient number of bidders try to present procuring entities with good offers, helping them maximize value for money of their contracts. So to ensure competitive bidding, public contracts opportunities must be transparent, must be accessible, and all prospective buyers must be treated equally. So these are basically the principles of the public procurement, which can help minimize corruption risks and generally help fulfill both the primary and the secondary objectives of the public procurement. So in a way, society can directly benefit from these principles, from uncompromised quality of goods and services. And at the same time, when we talk about the second objective, basically more when we talk about transparent and open public procurement, that also means that more funds are available to finance projects aimed at achieving the SDGs and basically to contribute to SDGs through their social and environment considerations. So I will go quickly through each of the SDGs because I kind of like wanted to show that how actually public procurement is important and how each of the SDG actually goals have a very specific target that is actually related to public procurement. So in a way to really show that public procurement is not about 1 or 2 or 3 goals, but it's about all 17 goals. So when it comes to no poverty goal, of course, economic growth must be inclusive to provide sustainable jobs and promote equality. So we can actually see that there are 2 targets that are directly linked with public procurement, because key part of the poverty reduction is the provision of public services and safety nets which strengthen poor and vulnerable population, and therefore public procurement can really help and support equal access to basic services and also building the resilience and poor and vulnerable to shocks and disasters. On the zero hunger goal, basically public procurement is not just about providing food through social services, but it can also leverage basically food producers to access to markets, and also investing in infrastructure that will increase agricultural productivity and food distribution. So directly relates to these 2 targets. Good health and well-being, not even to mention how much procurement actually can be important, because at this moment, when we are all struggling with COVID-19, and national and international organizations are really the largest public buyers of medicines and medical equipment. So timely and effective and efficient delivery and transparency are really important to actually ensure that basically the medicines are basically reach those that are in need on time. Then the next goal is around the quality education. So as you can see, there are 2 targets that are directly linked to free and equitable and quality education in early childhood. So this is also important because it's obtaining a quality education is a foundation to improving people's lives and sustainable development. The gender equality, of course, is extremely important, and we also at Kpis are really putting a special emphasis on this, because gender responsive procurement is basically at the core also of the sustainable public procurement. And you can also see the targets that are actually quite important and are directly linked with public procurement. Clear water and sanitation, clean, accessible water for all is an essential part of the world that we want to live in. And infrastructure basically relies on public procurement for construction and innovation, which relates to all the targets on this goal. Decent work and economic growth. Also, everything that we discussed later, Mushtaq and Nicholas mentioned about the affordable and clean energy. The target 7B also talks about the procurement and how actually it can actually really support this goal. The goal on the decent work and economic growth is also extremely important, because sustainable economic growth actually requires societies to create the conditions that allow people to have quality jobs. So you can see that everything related to job creation or young people and persons with disabilities and equal pay for work, the procurement can really influence those policies, because you can put in the bidding criteria all those considerations that could then actually really basically provide benefits for definitely for this goal. When it comes to industry innovation and infrastructure, the infrastructure, developing the resilient infrastructure with equitable access, sustainable and resource efficient, is extremely important and public procurement can really play a very, very important role there as well. Reducing inequalities, so procurement laws and processes can also offer opportunity for social, economic, and political inclusion of all, and ensure equal opportunity and reduce inequalities of outcome. Sustainable cities and communities. So there needs to be a future in which cities can provide opportunities for all in terms of the basic services, housing, transportation, and of course, integrated policies. And public procurement can really play a very important role also in achievement of these goals. And you can see basically that it actually touches upon various targets of this goal. This is the goal 12 on responsible consumption and production. And there is of course, target 1.7 that I think Shtak was also mentioning about, which is directly related to promoting sustainable procurement practices. Climate action. So building resilience to climate change and natural disasters, and also climate change mitigation and adaptation. This can all be also done with really providing and supporting and providing and using basically the procurement to actually really build on these elements and to integrate basically into the bidding process some of these elements that are actually, can be like a green and sustainable environment. And so this is also like a very important element of the public procurement that can actually work towards this goal. Life below water, including environmental consideration in public coastal infrastructure, is also very important in the sense that careful management of this global resource is a key feature of sustainable future. So of course, I mean, bidding considerations to also include elements on environmental considerations in the public procurement are also very important. Life on land. So basically, public bodies overseeing national parks and land resources rely on procurement in fulfilling these duties. And you can see that it's around conservation, restoration, sustainable use of inland, of fresh water ecosystems, sustainable management, so all types of forests, and also combating desertification and restoring degraded land are kind of three targets that are actually where public procurement can support. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. It's all about access to justice for all, building effective, accountable institutions, really reducing corruption and bribery, developing effective, accountable, and transparent institutions, and public access to information, which is also some of the key basically targets that our project Kpis is also working towards. And last but not least is, of course, the sound public procurement system in the partnerships, which is actually around the collective action approach by promoting partnerships among the governments, private sector, civil society, and public on public procurement. So to conclude, we have less than 10 years in achieving the SDG agenda, and we are seeing strengthening of adverse effects on climate change, the spread of global pandemic, and the rise of inequalities, and they're all taking a huge toll on socioeconomic development in our region and globally. So it is really critical that public procurement is taken to its full potential to enable innovation, resilience, and support policies that are inclusive and that will lead to achievement of sustainable development goals. And to conclude, I think that sustainability is a lifestyle that we must all embrace for the benefit of future generation. Thank you so much, and these are the links to our project.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Darko. Okay, so that was a great series of presentations, and it was a very good combination. I want to probably go back to the Q&A session, and then we had one question that's again linked to maps. And so I'll give you the floor to Nicholas again, and then I'll just skim through a few other questions. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Akiko. So the other question is about maybe the difficulty that the person that Magda is expressing about persons who know really how to conduct a MAPS assessment, and what are we planning to do about that. So we understand that MAPS, the methodology is open to anyone, so it can be, it's free for use, it's free for downloading at the website. But of course, when you really apply it to a country, you need to know how to do it. You need to know how to do it, and also have the necessary proficiency and knowledge of general procurement to undertake it. So in general, our view and how we see this, and even published guidance on our website about it, is that the profile for a lead MAPS assessor is really a seasoned public procurement expert with over 10 to 15 years of experience handling procurement topics and policies, and who in general also knows how to use these type of tools. And this is especially in order to guarantee the objectivity and impartiality and professionalism of the assessments. Many institutions rely on the findings of the assessment to either implement reform internally, but also international donors and institutions rely on the findings of the assessment to provide funding or to provide technical assistance. So it's really important that the assessment is, again, professional, impartial, and objective. So with that, what we are deploying, and we hope to start to do that next year, as the MAP Secretary was just really started this year. We want to start training a bit more and possibly using e-learning tools so that more assessors throughout the world can understand how to use maps. And there will be always these different types of assessments. So you were mentioning government-led assessments are a possibility, but we always understand that there's the need to have someone who impartially, and in general, it should be an international assessor who can give an impartial view outside of the country of what should be happening, of the best practices, possibly accompanied by other local consultants and even some government officials who might provide information for some of the indicators. So in a nutshell, we expect next year to start deploying, or to start at least creating those modules that will be available for more training, so that there are more assessors who can do this.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And now there's another question also from Magda, but this is now to Darko. Wonder if you're ready. Don't need to. Okay, maybe you can read the question to the UNDP
Yes.
service.
Sure. So thanks, Magda, for your question. When it comes to working with the civil society, we are also working with our partner COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, together in partnership with Kpis. And we are actually working on a multi-stakeholder dialogue approach, which actually includes private sector, civil society, and government representatives, really discussing some of the key kind of like elements of the big infrastructure projects and procurement and infrastructure projects. So the civil society organizations are actually included in basically, like, designing and delivering some of those kind of like standards. And I think we will actually have more on this on the session 2, where we will also have representative from COST and from the Controller Department, General Department of Accounts from Thailand, which are going to exactly explain how this is actually being done. And I think at this moment in Thailand and in Indonesia, we are working on really like trying to kind of like include more and more civil society to actually be part of that dialogue, because I mean, at the end of the day, civil society organizations are very much aware about the situation on the ground, and they're actually able to really provide with government some really like important information that can be then added into the procurement process. But thank you so much, and you will definitely hear more about it on the session 2.
Thank you very much, Darko. And then I see that Stefanos is going to answer a question from this about this certificate. Or is it going to be answered by writing? If it's answered by writing, then I'm going to move to another question that came through a comment box from Julie about, she's very much involved in the 2022 SPP Global Review. With that time, I hope that somebody who is supporting us technically can allow her to speak. But I would like to, because of the time that we have, I'd like to just ask her to be brief, and then maybe instead of asking questions to the panelists, but maybe if you can briefly share some of the survey results that you think is relevant to this question, this session, that would be very useful. Over to you, Julie. Jelly. I don't know if I can give a floor. I don't think I can give a floor. So it needs to be.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Yep, I can hear
Okay,
something. Oh,
hi.
yes, yes. Hi,
Yes,
hi,
good,
Joey. Yes,
good
we
afternoon.
can hear
Yes,
you.
I am Jelly. I'm currently working for Unep in the completion of the 2022 SPP Global Review. I wanted to share actually one slide because I think this is really very important on the discussion that you're having, because we asked 45 national governments in our survey on the link of public procurement with SDG. And interestingly, all of them have actually chosen all SDGs. Of course, SDG 12 has like 82% rate of response. And then the lowest is SDG 4 with 2% response. And then none of them from the 45 participating countries have chosen SDG 16 as an SDG that is directly linked with it's SPP. So I just would like to know your possible intake on this particular assessment, because we are actually doing the final writing of the assessment for this chapter, and then hopefully publish the result by the end of this year. So I mean, it is very interesting to know your intake on why is it that there are 45 national governments and they're freely, they were given the choice to choose among the 12, the 17 SDGs. They can just click on the questionnaire and they choose like 1, 2, 3, or 5 SDGs, but none of them actually has chosen SDG 16 as something very related to SPP.
Any responses or any views that you want to share? Yes, Mustaq.
Thank you. So, though I cannot, respond on the behalf of the governments, but what my feeling, or based on my experience of surveys, that how we pose the question and how governments can understand that to respond. So for them, like 16, the relevance between the peace, justice, and institutions to the SPP, if it's not clearly mentioned, that basically when we are, as Darko also mentioned about the institutions, or Nicholas mentioned about the corruption and all this, that how sustainable public procurement in itself is strengthening the transparency, the institutions. So we have to like explain that. For example, you mentioned about, again, the SDG 4, and if education, quality education, and I think one of the big chunk of the public procurement is in education spendings, whether it be the green buildings or let's call buildings, whether it be the stationery, textbooks, and so on. So I think there's a huge amount of public procurement getting to the quality education. So again, my worry is that the questions may not be explained well to the governments to receive the answers. Thank you.
If I may also mention that I think it also shows that probably we at Fairbiz need to do more work, because I think when it comes to actually goal 16, I mean, you know, reducing corruption and bribery, or like really dealing with effective and accountable and transparent institutions is the key basically to actually sustainable public procurement, because I think we really need to have an open, transparent public procurement process that actually really kind of like includes all of those elements of sustainability, such as environment, social, like human rights, gender, promotion, and supporting the marginalized groups and institutions to actually really be able to kind of like in a holistic way achieve the SDG. So I think, you know, I think SDG goal 16 is one of the prerequisites actually to actually ensuring that environment, social, and economic actually elements are actually included in the sustainable public procurement in the right way. So yes, I guess we need a little bit more maybe promotion and education of that in that regard.
Thank you very much. Yes, SDG 16 can be probably most vague or most
yes,
least concrete goal, which can, you know, be linked to many things. But
Yeah.
Okay, we see one question about impact. So is there a system available that measures the impact of these sustainability measures in public procurement? This is a bit, kind of, future looking. Any public procurement entities measuring the impacts? Any takers? Either it exists or any thoughts going forward to strengthen this measuring impacts effort from the panelists? Mustak?
Yeah, so on the one hand, like currently, because Unep is leading on SDG 12 and also 12.7, so SDG 12.7 has become a tier 3, like so the methodologies are in place in a way, but still, as I like, usually whenever we say procurement, public procurement is the least cost or the value for money like situation. So then it really comes to the point that how do we measure? Suppose, again, coming to the energy example, that we do usually measure that how much government spends the money and how much energy coverage or energy efficiency and so on is done. So basically there's no direct, but there is like a way that with this much of spending, how much additional energy is in the system and so on, or how much additional like a coverage of health, education and so forth. So I think it can easily be like a measured because governments spend vis-a-vis their like annual reports that how much they additionality or value added brought into the system. So one needs to work a little bit, but to find the value, but I think it's possible.
Thank you very much, Mustak. Anybody who wants to contribute? Else, let me then ask maybe Mustak, or it could be anybody else, but just ask one question to address the kind of elephant in the room. So there are some perceptions that this application of sustainable public procurement philosophy and approach that can be costly. Because it will increase the value of public contracts by meeting, stricter social and environment safeguard requirements, or requiring or expecting, application of more modern or new technologies, or many other factors. With that perception existing, it may discourage national governments and others who are organizing the public procurement from actively, supporting this policy in their practice. They might be attending these sessions and then they are inspired, but when they come back to their reality and they go back to their business, they might say, yeah, that's great, but here's our reality. How or what can you say about this? How are we going to remove this perceptional barrier to move forward? Yes, Mr.
Quickly, I just put a very simple example on the table. So it depends, like we have annual budget systems, no? So suppose we are organizing like a sort of a drinking facility for the office staffs and so on. And if we look on the life cycle of the plastic glasses vis-a-vis the glass glasses vis-a-vis the steel glasses. Now, if you are looking on the steel glasses, which have a longer like life span and recycling value and everything, but because it's a bit expensive and doesn't fit into the annual budget like a plan. So that is where the governments really have to rethink about that, how they manage that part. That's number one example. Other example is that if, as I say, market readiness, if governments decide that, okay, because of certain pressures or meeting the NDCs or whatever, and next month we will want to change our this product to that product to reduce the climate impact. but then the market is not ready. So they have to have imports and so on. Just one example for that, suppose one of the private companies in detergents in Thailand, they have to use the recyclable packaging, but because in Thailand, they do not find that, so they have to import from other country to Thailand, but then it's being again dumped into the waste management here because there's no recycling system for that type of thing. So then it becomes more expensive and also not really helpful for the environment. So one has to sensitize, one have to have a planning in place and so on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you very much for all the audience and active participation. This comes to we have come to the end of this session. I hope that all these public procurement officers, you feel empowered more after this session. And I also think that I hope that this session enticed your interest more for other sessions that are going to address the civil society participation and many other topics that can come after this. I will, with that, let me thank the panelists once again. Thank you very much, Nicholas, Mustak, and Dago. And I'm going to bring the floor back to Viviana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm appearing on the screen to transition you to session 2. So this first session was really very good. It was really very good to start with the framework of our dialogue today. But now in the session 2, we are gonna dive deep in the public procurement ecosystem, a system approach and the collective action. So what we're gonna hear in this session is some country examples. The person that will moderate this session is Diana Torres. She is a UNDP Assistant Resident Representative in UNDP Vietnam Country Office and Head of Governance and Participation. Diana has over 12 years of experience working in the UN at headquarters, regional and country level. And actually, some time ago, she was also managing the Fair Business Project here in Bangkok. So it's nice to have Diana back with us today. And she will also describe to you an important piece of work that we published earlier this year. Is a resource guide on public procurement, on open and transparent procurement. And she contributed a lot to that product. So over to you, Diana. Thank you.
Thank you, Liviana, and good afternoon to everyone who is joining us today in this very exciting session. I think we have about 148 participants joining us this afternoon. As introduced by Liviana, my name is Diana Torres, and I'm based in Vietnam, so greetings from Hanoi, Vietnam. I'm here, the head of governance and participation. And I'm looking forward to have to learn more about these practices and good examples from the countries, from 3 countries today. We will be hearing from Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And what we're looking is more new innovations on how we can strengthen what we call an ecosystem approach to public procurement, and to ensure that that the governments in the ASEAN region make that transition of policy shift to an open government, an open and more transparent government, and that leverage public procurement as a vehicle to achieve sustainable development goal, which is the main topic of the seminar that we are here today. So we have a very interesting lineup of speakers and panelists today. So allow me to briefly introduce them. We have Mrs. Patarapon Woroshap, who is the advisor, fiscal advisor. One second. Is a fiscal advisor in Thailand, fiscal and financial system development advisor from the Controllers General Department and Ministry of Finance. She will be joined during her presentation with Mrs. Clara Feng, who is the Asia Regional Manager of COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, and she's based in Singapore. She has been working together with the Fair Business Project in the implementation of the COST approach, both in Thailand and Indonesia. We are also joined today by Mrs. Dee Wee Wajahmoni, Director of Business Climate Development and International Affairs of Kpis, the procurement agency in Indonesia. She's in charge of the formulating strategies, policies, and guidelines regarding business climate and international cooperation in the government procurement. And finally, we will hear again from Mrs. Rowena Candice Ruiz, Executive Director from the Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office in the Philippines. So it's a full female panel today, which is also very interesting to hear all of these female leaders talking about public procurement, which is has not been I think traditionally in many other countries. So that's another interesting aspect of our panel today. So I will give a very brief context setting of around 5 minutes of why we are here and what has been UNDP approach to open, transparent public procurement, and especially promoting like a multi-stakeholder approach that will support a more open and transparent public procurement that actually will serve as a vehicle for value for money and bring value to the public spending. And then that will be followed by the 3 presentations, one from Thailand, second from Indonesia, and then the Philippines. And then we'll have hopefully room for some Q&A and taking some questions from the floor as well. So just to start kind of setting the context. So as we have heard today, public procurement has been recognized as kind of a sensitive and high risk area for corruption. According to the UNODC, approximately 10 to 20% of all funds spent on public procurement globally are lost through corruption. And as a result of this, we have poor infrastructure development, insufficient service delivery to taxpayers. And we also have seen that through the COVID-19 pandemic and the health crisis, we have seen the vulnerability of procurement systems that have been captured by corrupt practices. And in this case, what procurement systems are not equipped with the necessary tools to ensure transparency, accountability, and integrity. Well, they actually hinder a lot any kind of COVID recovery and response, as has been the case in many countries around the world. So efforts to safeguard government transparency and accountability in ASEAN are increasingly being influenced by technological changes and shifting in political tides, along with citizen demands and concern from the private sector about how to eliminate corruption and improve a level playing field for all the stakeholders. And these issues are redefining the effective government information disclosure methods. So adapting to this evolving landscape presents challenges and opportunities not only for an increased efficiency in government spending, but also for how policymakers, business, and citizens can leverage public procurement and public spending to meet the region's commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals. In this region, in the last decade, we have seen new procurement laws and institutions. We have seen civil society that have emerged, looking and more engaged on public procurement. And we have seen also business coalition and collective action advocating for the right to information, for greater accountability, for anti-money laundering efforts. And we have seen also that more efforts in terms of strengthening the capacities of oversight institutions that are looking at corruption risk in public procurement. But still more needs to be done to increase the collaboration between civil society and the private sector in improving transparency and anti-corruption efforts. So to actively engage with this, and also to actively engage with underrepresented populations in public procurement, and which will be critical to further leverage technological innovations and facilitate participation. So responding to this context and positive trends that we have seen in the region, not as fast as is happening in other regions. I will say that in the ASEAN region, is still a lot of work needs to be done in terms of opening up public procurement systems and in a transparent and inclusive manner. But in response to this, we have seen some changes, and UNDP have developed a new guide that Liliana just introduced. It's a new resource guide called Building Transparent and Open Public Procurement Systems for Achieving the SDGs in ASEAN. This resource guide is available in the UNDP website, and it was launched earlier this year. And what it actually does, it maps out existing tools and practices in the region and beyond, which have been successful in achieving the objective of strengthening the capacities of important actors of the public procurement ecosystem to improve transparency, integrity, and ensure that public procurement delivers public values and value for money. It also lays out some entry points for policy dialogue and reforms at national and subnational level. And actually, some of these good practices that have been identified in the resource guide are going to be presented today from the panelists that we have today. So the content of this guide reflects on 5 main drivers or ingredients that we found that are important to support a public procurement ecosystem. The first one is having a transparent and open public procurement system in itself. We need good systems that will allow for open data and for transparency. And then this needs to be accompanied by a solid and robust citizens' participation and civil society engagement. We also need to support private sector engagement through collective action that will to join the conversation, but also to do some monitoring on public procurement and government contracts. And another important element are oversight institutions that will be looking at corruption prevention, but also on red flags and loopholes that need to be addressed in case of any corruption risk. And then there is also an opportunity to look at affirmative actions for inclusive development while using technological innovations where appropriate. So I hope this served as a good context setting. As I said, we will hear from a few presentations today. So with this, allow me to introduce our first speaker. It will be, the presentation is from Thailand on citizen participation, monitoring and reporting throughout the procurement cycle. We have Mrs. Clara Feng, Regional Manager of COST, the Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, who will be joining Mrs. Patarapon Borasapa, Advisor of the Fiscal and Financial System Development from the Controller General's Department from CGD, Ministry of Finance in Thailand. So dear Clara and Mrs. Patarapon, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Diana. It's a real privilege to join this esteemed group of ladies. And as you noted, I think it's not that common to see so many women in procurement, but we're very heartened to see the active participation of so many talented women across the region. So a very good morning, afternoon, and evening to wherever you are. So in today's presentation, I will be jointly presenting with Kun Patarapon from the Controller General Department of Thailand, and it's a real privilege to discuss how the COST approach has been promoting citizen participation in the monitoring of the reporting cycle and of monitoring and reporting throughout the procurement cycle in Thailand. So without further ado, I'll just do a quick brief introduction of what COST is. So COST is a multi-stakeholder initiative that works with government, private sector, and civil society to promote transparency and accountability across the procurement cycle, in particular to public infrastructure investments. So as a multi-stakeholder initiative, we operate a membership program throughout the world, and we have over 20 members, and in the Asian region, we have membership from Thailand, as well as in Indonesia, a subnational government, as well as Timor-Leste. So how each of these national programs run, they are independently managed by a multi-stakeholder group, and their activities are run entirely independently of each other. But what binds them together is that they all believe in the same cost approach, which is to work together and to solve problems collectively. So what we do at COST is that we develop tools, standards, and guidance. And so this includes what we'll be discussing more, which the infrastructure data standard, which sets out 40 data points for procuring entities to disclose data along across the entire procurement cycle at both the contract as well as the project level. And we also have developed other tools such as the Infrastructure Transparency Index, which helps governments assess their procurement levels of transparency in the procurement entities within their countries. And so as at the International Secretariat, we also provide technical assistance and provide grants to our members to support their work. And we also promote learning and informed international debate and participate in activities such as the Fair Business Project. And through all this, the idea is to strengthen financial management. But I think at the heart, of course, it's really about promoting public trust, because we know that procurement tends to be a very technical or rather very technical, and I think a lot of people, laypersons, don't exactly understand what procurement is, and this is why it's really important to be transparent, to have the disclosure of data, so that with this data we're able to explain how certain resources are used and how the procurement cycle is managed in a clear and coherent manner. And I think through all of this, the end goal is really to improve lives. So we do so, we have a four-pronged approach. So the first is a multi-stakeholder working. And so as you can see in the photo, there is a multi-stakeholder group, and in Thailand, the Controller General Department at the Ministry of Finance manages it, and they are the chair of the multi-stakeholder group. So it brings together reform-minded government officials with civil society and private sector representatives. And they do so by providing oversight and governance of the cost activities in country. And so they oversee the disclosure of infrastructure project data. And there's also an independent assessment process called the assurance process, because we also understand that infrastructure can be very technical, and it would be unfair for citizens who are laypersons to actually understand the mechanics of it. And this is where we bring in independent experts, where they would assess the data disclosed and also conduct field visits. And through this, create the evidence that would inform policy making and allow participation of civil society participants and the private sector, so that they can actually bring about social accountability. So with this, I'll pass this over to Kun Pattarapon, who will go into a lot more detail of what specifically Cost Thailand has been doing. Thank you.
So thank you, Kara. Good afternoon and good morning and good evening in some country. Actually, I'm Pattarapon Warasap, advisor of the financial. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I will continue.
Yes, continue.
Actually, I'm from the Ministry of Finance and a part of the Comptroller General Department. This is my pleasure to present to you about actually this is our first topic about the public procurement ecosystem, but like that, as Kara just mentioned that we will talk a little bit about the cost in Thailand. In order to promote transparency, citizen participation, and monitoring and reporting throughout the procurement circle in Thailand. I will start with a briefly of the cost of Thailand, be a wonderful video clip presentation. And after that, I will present about the impact of the cost Thailand and the assurance process will be shown. And lastly, I will present about the future plan in Thailand. This slide is about the history of the cost of Thailand. First of all, I would like to tell you about the Thailand joint cost in 22nd and September 2014. And the cabinet appoint the Comptroller General Department, Ministry of Finance, to be the National Secretariat on 5th of January 2017. By went to the on the power grant by Section 17, Paragraph 2 of the 2017 Public Procurement and Supply Administration Acts. The Anti-Corruption Cooperation Committee has established the cost program as procedure to facilitate public participant in the public procurement. Now, please let me allow you to show you a briefly introduction of the cost of Thailand, about 4 minutes. Please see the video clip, please.
Have you ever wondered how does corruption in public construction projects affect us?
Excuse me, what happened? Tara?
I think we reaching out to our technical team to help us
particularly
with the video. Mrs. Patarapon, give us 1 second. I guess the technical team should be fixing this technical glitch.
We will share the video clip in Thailand right now.
Sorry?
We will share a video clip by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I believe it's coming up. If Mrs. Patarapon, you are sharing the screen right now, I think you should have the rights to.
Everyone can see the video clip. Everyone can see the video clip.
No, we cannot see the video.
Oh, really?
Perhaps you can let me share screen. I could try showing it on my end.
Yeah. Otherwise, maybe we can share the video link. So let's give it a try. Apologies to our dear participants. As much as we tested, it's coming along.
Okay.
Thank you. Cannot hear though.
Oh dear, is it not here? You're not hearing it?
No.
Oh dear. Or maybe Mr. Patarapon, perhaps you could continue the presentation without the video, and we could share the video to the attendees later.
Ara, if you share with the share computer sound option clicked, we should be able to hear your video. So when you're sharing your screen, that should be in the bottom left corner.
We will still have our video clip.
Wait, let me try. Wait, I need to share the sound, right? Okay, does this work now?
Projects. The value of corruption tend to range between 10 to 30% of project value. But if we can manage and operate the infrastructure projects to be more efficiently, we can prevent the damage up to 162 trillion baht a year. Do you think it would be better if people can monitor, comment, and examine these public construction projects? We would like to introduce Infrastructure Transparency Initiative Project, or COST. The vision of COST is quality infrastructure, stronger economies, and better lives. What is COST? COST was initiated by the cooperation between the United Kingdom and World Bank in 2012. COST consists of 4 features, including: firstly, Multi-Stakeholder Group, or MSG. The MSG Group of Thailand consists of representatives from public sector, private sector, and civil society organization. The subcommittee in charge of anti-corruption cooperation prescribed in the Public Procurement and Supplies Management Act of 2017 shall act as the MSG. Secondly, disclosure. The procuring entities who are the COST project owners must disclose the data from their infrastructure projects on COST Thailand website. A total of 40 data points are disclosed at key stages throughout the entire project cycle in the COST infrastructure data standard format. Thirdly, assurance. Thailand has the assurance team who monitor and review the accuracy and completeness of the disclosed data and also identify issues of concern for the public in order to publish an annual report. Lastly, promoting public participation. Thailand endeavored to promote public participation through several channels such as public forums and social media platforms in order to strengthen accountability and deliver practical improvement. All of this is the overview of COST Thailand. Next, we will clarify the benefits of COST Thailand. For government, they can improve transparency and accountability in public infrastructure projects and reduce the risk of taking advantage from powerful groups and corruption. For private sector, COST can increase competitiveness in public procurement and provide appropriate price with high quality of work. For public, they will receive benefits from high standard infrastructures and also get the infrastructures that meet their needs, which are value for money. Now, are you ready for being part of the COST Thailand and making our country be better? If you want to join us, please visit our website for more information at www.cgd.go.th, Topic Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, COST, or www.gprocurement.go.th, Topic COST Thailand, or Facebook COST Thailand, or contact us at Public Procurement Cooperation and Transparency Division, the Comptroller General's Department. Let's join us and become part of COST Thailand to drive positive changes in our country together.
Yes, thank you very much for watching our video about Thailand. And like I said that you can contact us at the Comptroller General Department by going to our website www.cgd.go.th. Now I will move on. Kara, can you show me? Can you put my presentation? Next slide. The slide that about impact of the COST Thailand. Yeah, this slide. When you're watching our video about Thailand, now we move to the figure that highlight the number of related of cost of Thailand. These slides, I will show you that 1,073 projects. This goes on the cost website. The number has rapidly increased since 2018 when we include the project from the local authorities. There are 883 projects from the local authorities, 178 projects from the central government agencies, and another 12 from the state-owned enterprise. The total number of the budget is around 3.64 trillion US dollar, and the calculate for focal price is 3.52 trillion of USA dollar. And contract value is 3.11 trillion US dollar. Next slide, please. Now, we can move to the video that I will show you the arrangement of the public forum for the exchange of the opinion. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. This slide, I will show you. Can back to the clip video. Yeah, this slide. Can you hold? This is play the important role in the ensure that the issue. This is okay. The video clip that I will show you some part of the activity that we present and we participate in the another projects. Yeah. This video clip also show that the Comptroller General Departments at the National Secretariat and the assurance team when site visit to the observe construction sites and arrange public forum with stakeholder. Multi-stakeholder group will select around 10 projects each year for these activities. This is a part of the assurance process that can provide Cost Thailand a deeper understanding about each project. Assurance result will be considered in order to improve both the operation of the cost and public procurement in Thailand. We have a lot of activity that we go to in each project, in each or some parts of Thailand. You can see this project is a lot of project to do on the Cost Thailand. We let the Thai citizen to involve us to give an opinion, give a problem, any problem that they want the government agency to improve or to adjust. You can see that they have a lot of the Thai citizens to join us. This is also on the Cost of Thailand. Yes. This slide, I will show you about the future plan that we plan to do in next year. I will emphasize that we will do to improve transparency in the public procurement. Firstly, the Comptroller General Department will develop new Cost Thailand website to be more interactive and lively. The current website can only show data and information from the construction project. It cannot display some significant features such as comparison, sorting, and filter. The new website will allow users to adopt the display invalidity of form based on cost infrastructure data standard. It is also improve the performance of the website for all type of user as well. Secondly, we are looking to increase public engagement since the number of the people participate in Cost Thailand website and Cost Thailand's Facebook page are still low. I believe that the more public participants can bring more transparency to the public procurement. New Cost Thailand website will compose of significant data and information that is sufficient for the public to know. They can use those information to identify what we project have done. They can use those information to identify what the project has done compared to the disclosed data. Citizens can also call or email to the Comptroller General Department team if they find something wrong or suspicious. In conclusion, although when we have changed the public procurement to be electricity, the corporations from relevant stakeholders, especially for the public participant, is still one of the most important factors for the success to tackle against corruptions. That's all for my presentation. Once again, I would like to say thank you for everyone to listen to me, and thank you UNDP to invite us to join for this seminar. Thank you.
Dear Clara and Kulpatarapon, thank you so much for your presentation. I think you have inspired us a lot today, and especially triggered a lot of questions, and that hopefully we have the time to discuss later on during the Q&A session. But yeah, it is a very good example to see how this open and transparent public procurement can be applied in the infrastructure sector and help through this multi-stakeholder approach, where we engage citizens, but also private sector and government to work together to increase public trust and to reduce any corruption risk through just making data accessible and create opportunities for engagement. So thank you so much, and I hope we can continue the conversation during the Q&A and if time permits. So with that, moving from citizens' participation and monitoring of infrastructure projects, then we'll move to the next presentation, turning to Indonesia. And our speaker there is Mrs. Juni, and apologies for the misspelling your name, but she's the Director for Business, Climate Development and International Affairs of LKPP, which is the National Public Procurement Agency in Indonesia. So, and Mrs. will be talking about inclusive and fair environment for public procurement to be accessible by SMEs, business owned women, business owned by women, and other traditional underrepresented groups. So over to you, Mrs. Wee. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ms. Torres. Good afternoon and also good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished guests here. It is a great pleasure for National Public Procurement Agency of Republic Indonesia to be invited by NPA in this event. Public procurement in achieving the SDGs, regional dialogue. So on behalf of NPA, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sri Wahyuni, Director of Business Climate Development and Professional Cooperation in NPA. And today I would deliver the presentation regarding environment for public procurement, and it will focus on SME's role in government procurement in Indonesia. This slide, let's take a look at the regulatory framework of government procurement in Indonesia. Government procurement is regulated in Presidential Regulation number 16, 2018, which has been amended by Presidential Regulation number 12, 2021 regarding government procurement. To further support the implementation of the presidential regulation, we also issued some NPA regulation, and chairman of NPA circulation letters and deputy chairman circulation letter. As I mentioned in the presidential regulation, the purpose of government procurement in Indonesia, there are 8 purposes. And among them, the purpose which directly correlated with sustainable procurement and SDGs are increasing sustainable procurement, and then encourage participation of MSME, micro and small medium enterprises and cooperatives, and also increase the use of domestic product. And the fourth is enhance the role of national operators. And the other purpose of our government procurement is provide accurate goods and services which emphasize on value for money, and then increase use of domestic product, encourage economic equality and enlarge business opportunities, and also improve the participation of industry, support the implementation of research in goods and service. And we consider that MSME, micro and small medium enterprise, domestic products, and national operators as part of social aspect in sustainability. And moving on the procedural rules, slide. In accordance to our principle for government procurement, which is open, competitive, and fair, the condition of participation of government procurement in Indonesia is open for all, based on eligibility criteria determined in qualification document. This means objective and non-discriminatory. And about the procurement methods, we encourage the use of purchasing. So if the goods or services are available in list catalog, when it is not available, we also have other procurement methods. There are a direct procurement, direct appointment, or quick tender, or tender. And all of these procurement methods determined by professional judgment. And to increase the participation of SMEs, according to our regulation, we allocated a minimum of 40% from government spending for micro and small enterprises, as it is regulated in the law of the Republic of Indonesia number 11 year 2020 on job creation, or better known as Omnibus Law. And further on Presidential Regulation number 12 year 2021 regarding our government procurement on Article 65 state that for procurement of goods, construction work, or other services with a budget selling value up to 15 billion is intended for small business and cooperatives. This provision provides a great opportunity for women entrepreneurs, which are most whom are small and micro business, to participate in the government procurement. And we also regulate about the use of domestic product and price preference. In accordance to Presidential Regulation number 12 2021 regarding government procurement, Article 66, it is mandatory to have preference if there are providers offering goods or services with a local content plus corporate value exceeding 40%. And then we also have preference, of course, of 20% on goods and services, incorporating at least 25% local content for all bids over 1 million Indonesian rupiah, and for construction work is 7.5% above the lowest bid price of the foreign contractors. That's our procedural rules in terms of regulatory and policy framework. And then we moving on the sustainable public procurement. Yeah, in this slide, we have several provisions which regulate sustainable public procurement. Okay, in the Presidential Regulation number 16 year 2018, as amended by President Regulation number 12 year 2021, we already define sustainable procurement, in which is the procurement of goods and services, which is intended to achieve benefit value that is economically beneficial, not only for a ministry or agency or regional operator as their user, but also for the community, and significantly reduce the negative impact upon the environment in the whole cycle of their use. As I mentioned before, that we already set the sustainable procurement as the purpose of government procurement in Article 4. And then for the implementation, we also give the authority to PPK. PPK is budget owner in preparing technical specification using environmentally friendly product. And in the Article 68, we further define the 3 sustainable aspects of sustainable procurement. Yeah, you can take a look in the right side of this slide. Environment aspect. The first one is environment aspect. Is it about the reduction of negative impact upon health, air quality, soil quality, water quality, and use of natural resources in accordance with the provision of the prevailing law and regulation. And the economic aspect, which include the cost of producing goods and services throughout the life. And regarding social aspect, about the empowerment of small-scale businesses, guarantees of fair working condition, empowerment of local communities and businesses, equality and diversity. We also issued a chairman of NPPA circulator letter number 16 year 2020 to introduce green product or the product of green industry, which ready to be used in government procurement. So how the implementation of that regulation? Yeah. Despite the existing regulation and policy to increase the participation of SMEs, currently there are several barriers which pose as barriers for SMEs participation in government procurement. We have this data based on research study, actually in this year. First, the barriers is a lack of SMEs knowledge and experience about the procedure and know-how of government procurement, and it may reduce the success rate of SMEs when applying for participation. So to break those barriers, we took several actions, such as the first one is conducting capacity building to increase the SMEs understanding about the government procurement know-how. And we also established one application called Vendor Directory. This is a website which serves as information and learning gateway for suppliers, especially for SMEs. And the second barrier is lack of financial modalities to execute procurement work. And to solve these barriers, there is regulation actually that budget owner can give a down payment for the SMEs. And also there are several government programs in financial sector to provide direct financial support of SMEs. And the third barrier is there is administrative limitation to participate in government procurement for SMEs. And to break these barriers, we have direct purchasing platform exclusive for SMEs. We call it as Bela Pengadaan. And this Bela Pengadaan run in collaboration with a private e-marketplace. So, and the government of Indonesia is currently also establishing a risk-based approach online single submission. This is to simplify the administrative requirement for business as well as for SMEs. And regarding the women participation in government procurement, since there is no specific provision regarding women empowerment in government procurement, however, currently there are several information which pose as barriers for women participation in government procurement. As we have a database, this is based on study 2013 is quite long, but we can assume that this also happen in nowadays. The first is only 5% women-owned companies participating in year 2013 on 6 government procurement entities. Yeah, that's the data mentioned about that. And then the second one is compare with men-owned companies, women-owned companies on knowledge of government procurement regulation is lower. And the third one, there is a gender gap in access to financial services. The data mentioned that 62% men-owned companies ever apply for a loan to the bank, but only 50% women-owned companies do it. So for this breakout the barriers, there are several solutions. First one, based on our presidential regulation number 12, year 2021, Article 65 states that the package for procurement of goods, also construction work and other services with a budget selling value up to 15 billion is intended for small business and cooperative. These professions provide a great opportunities, of course, yeah, for women entrepreneurs, most of whom are small and micro business to participate in government procurement. And we also have a regular program, namely business actor capacity building, to provide information related to government procurement to business actor in Indonesia. So these activities can be an opportunities to scale up participation of women entrepreneurs in government procurement. And last but very important is Indonesia has a special ministry for women empowerment and child protection, and also the Ministry of Cooperative and Small and Medium Enterprises, which should be able to make a special program in increasing the capacity of women entrepreneurs to participate in the government procurement. So I think that's all my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking for the question and answer session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Back to you, Ms. Torres.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mrs. Dewey, for an excellent presentation, very complete, very good to hear all the progress that has happened in Indonesia from the legal framework. Although these reforms are quite new, as I can see, and they keep evolving, it's good to see that there are already insights in terms of what are the barriers and what is the progress of implementation of this new regulation. And I'm very pleased to see that Indonesia is quite advanced in terms of the thinking and how to approach public procurement for public value and for the SDGs, and already kind of aligning with international practices of opening up public procurement also for SMEs and thinking about inclusion of women-owned businesses. This is really, really inspiring, at least for me, that I'm based here in Vietnam, and I really wish more of our procurement officers in different agencies at local and central level could hear this presentation and get inspired, because that's, I think you are in the right track. And we look forward to hearing more of the progress in the future years of implementation with more data, but very congratulations, very, very inspiring. And I do hope that participants will post and comment on the presentation. So, and also with that, let me emphasize and invite all the participants that we have online to post your questions on the chat box or in the Q&A function. We will be having a 15 minutes time slot for questions and answers. Now let me turn to the Philippines, and we will hear from Ms. Rowena Candice Ruiz again. She's Executive Director from the Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office in the Philippines. And we will be hearing about the experience in the Philippines in setting up a procurement information dashboard and designing a roadmap for citizen engagement in public procurement. So Mrs. Rowena will have a video message, and then she's online to address any question from the floor.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really honored to be part of this regional procurement dialogue, particularly on citizen participation and Philippine government procurement monitoring. Now, let me begin by introducing you to the GPPB, or the Government Procurement Policy Board. This is the Central Procurement Policy Office in the Philippines, headed by the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management, acting as chairperson, with the Director General of the National Economic Development Authority as alternate chairperson. It has 14 member agencies and 1 private sector representative appointed by the President of the Philippines. The GPPB undertakes 3 main functions, and that's policymaking, capacity building, and monitoring. To enable the GPPB to effectively undertake these important functions, it has its own technical support office, or what we call the GPPB Technical Support Office, and that is the office where I belong. Okay. It's also important for me to note that in our procurement law, or Republic Act number 9184, there's 5 fundamental procurement principles that guides the GPPB and its technical support office in providing policy guidance or implementing rules and regulation. And that's transparency, a system of accountability, competitiveness, streamlined process, and public monitoring. I emphasize that both in the mandate and in the principles embedded in the law, monitoring really plays a critical, vital role. In fact, this has been institutionalized in our legal framework through the role of observers. We have CSO observers, or third-party entities not part of the organization of the procuring entity, who actually takes active role or part in the procurement process, not only a passive role. I say active because observers can submit a report on the specific transaction or procurement undertaking that it participated on. In order for the observers to competently do that, the observers has open and free access to important and critical procurement documents, such as the bidding documents, notices, resolutions, minutes of the meetings. Okay, so these are important tools and instruments that the observers can use to better prepare for their observers report. The observers report is submitted to the procuring entity, to the Office of the Ombudsman, and to the Government Procurement Policy Board. Now, as I always say, the role of the observers can be more meaningful and productive if we really undertake the training or the capacity building for observers. So for them to know what they're actually observing, what are the rules, what are the limitations, what are the prohibitions. And in fact, the GPPB TSO has been really engaging with our CSO stakeholders. And in July of this year, we were able to successfully implement and conduct a customized capacity development program for CSOs acting as observers. Here, we not only are able to update them on the latest rules, regulations, but more importantly, what are the tools and instruments they can use to better engage them and to better provide a report. So you have the GPPB online portal, that's for the Bayanihan procurement. We have the online blacklisting portal. We also have the latest or simplified Philippine bidding documents. And just this year, we launched the PBD Builder. Okay, and this is particularly interesting because during the open forum, we also conducted some sort of consultation with the CSO participants on how we can better improve the way we provide support to them. And that has been very, very productive in the sense that they really poured out their feelings, you know, and on how we can better improve our support and assistance to them. And also the GPPBTS has been engaging with our CSO stakeholders in terms of being part in the policy formulation process. You might ask, how is this done? We have been really actively inviting CSO representatives in our focus group discussions. In fact, the latest one is on the revision and streamlining of our community participation manual. Here, we really want to be able to ensure inclusiveness in the procurement process by asking CSOs at the local level how they can actually partake or participate in the procurement, not as an observer, but as supplier in the delivering goods or contractor in the implementation of infrastructure projects. For procurement projects where community participation is imperative or vital, or where this is being used by the procuring entity to better implement their policy objectives. So here, community participation calls on local communities, whether community or social groups, to actually participate in the procurement process. Okay. Now, why is it important for us to have a meaningful and productive collaboration with our CSO stakeholders? Why is third-party engagement important to us? Well, number one, because we want to diversify our data source. Why is that? Currently, in 2019, we embarked on this ambitious project with the help of UNDP to create our own procurement dashboard. And in 2020, we were able to finish this early 2020. So using the data from the PhilJEPs, data available from the PhilJEPs, using 3 pilot agencies, we're able to come up with our procurement dashboard. Here, we were able to see the buying trends of procuring entities, including average procurement timelines and periods, even the total volume and amount of awarded contracts over a period of 2 or 3 years. There's even a gender profiling of our procurement officer. And more importantly, we're able to actually come up with our own risk registry based on the procurement performance of this pilot agency. We've also identified good practices as well as areas needing improvement insofar as procurement rules are implemented and specific procurement transactions are undertaken by procuring entities. Okay, we are able to also build on this, and in 2020 we launched what we call the IRPP, or the Interim Review of Procurement Performance. In fact, we are now on our 2nd year. We are implementing this procurement diagnostics project where we provide the head of the procuring entity a report based now. Unlike in the procurement dashboard, this is based on the PhilJEPs data. The IRPP is based on the procurement report submitted by the procuring entities to the GPPB. Here we provide some basic data analytics, and we provide them also some recommendations on how to improve on their procurement performance. But more importantly, we have also identified good practices within the procuring entity so that they can further implement and even enhance these practices. Now, if you notice, we, insofar as our public monitoring function is concerned, we're looking into PhilJEPs data, we're looking into reports submitted by the agency. We want to diversify that and ensure that we also have another dimension, and that is from the CSO observers. And that is why we really want to be able to incorporate as well observers' report in our monitoring process. I will tell you later on how we plan to do that. But really, it's important for us to be able to diversify our data source so that it's really multifaceted. Now, how we are also collaborating meaningfully and productively with CSO, we are really actively engaging them. Apart from the FGTs, as I mentioned earlier, in fact, in the latest MAPS assessment of the Philippine procurement system, we have included CSO representative as part of the steering committee for the MAPS assessment. And it's not only for the start or the start of the implementation of the assessment, but up to its completion. What does it mean? It means that once we receive the final report on the MAPS assessment, we will be engaging with a CSO representative of the steering committee to plan the course of action of the Philippine government. Take note, it's not just the GPPB or its technical support office, but the Philippine government in addressing the recommendations and even the areas or gaps noted in the final report when it comes out. And at the same time, it will also be an opportunity to engage with the CSO on how we can improve on those the legal framework, the institutional framework, the projects and programs that we have to really further enhance integrity, transparency, and public monitoring and public procurement. Also recently, we had a meeting with the Philippine Contractors Association, where we will be collaborating with them in their procurement observer program. So here, these are observers for infrastructure project, and the GPPB TSO would be helping them in their training and certification, again, to ensure that we have actively engaged observers, no, in this case for infrastructure projects. And we wish to expand that further to cover all types of procurement. But we're just starting there. And how do we want to expand, and how do we want to be able to effectively diversify our data source? As I mentioned earlier, we wish to have a more proactive assistance to our CSOs. How do we do that? We are working on the development of an observers portal. Now, we've noticed that there are issues on the part of the procuring entity and also on the part of the observers. So procuring entities would always complain that there are not enough observers available. That's why they would be inviting, but they will not necessarily be available to actually participate. On the part of the observers, they don't know. They have not been invited. So we wanted to bridge the gap. We've come up with a plan to do that. And that's coming up with or developing an observers portal, which will serve as a common platform that will have the registry of the observers. We'll also have announcements of upcoming procurement activities. Okay. It will also cover all of the legal requirements insofar as no conflict of interest and confidentiality agreement. But more importantly, we aim to automate the submission of observers report. So we're looking into templates. So there would be regular. An observers report doesn't have to be negative. It can and should also be positive in terms of identifying good practices. So we wish to be able to really institutionalize the submission of the observers report through this portal. This way, we can go on to the next step and integrating this in our procurement monitoring processes, in our data analytics. So again, we come up with a more multifaceted approach in monitoring the procurement performance or health of the Philippine procurement system. Now, these are just some of the third-party engagement we've had over the years. So we have one with the Confederation of Filipino Consulting Organizations, or COFILCO. We also have one from the Arms for Global Defense. Okay. Now, I guess in summary, I wanted to really emphasize the need for third-party engagement. Why? Because as we've seen, it really enhances integrity. It provides a multifaceted perspective or dimension, particularly in terms of the data that we are able to get, not only from the side of the procuring entities themselves, but also from the CSO as stakeholders. Okay. And of course, it promotes greater accountability. And that's why I really do appreciate platforms like this, because we're able to communicate, indirectly or directly with our CSO stakeholders. We're able to bridge the gap so that CSOs really know what we're doing and may actively engage us as well on how they think we can improve on the way we are doing things. Now, I always say we may not always agree on how to do things, and that's really okay. In fact, that enriches the discussion further. But at the end of the day, what's important is not whether we agree or disagree, but what's important is that we do recognize the importance of third-party engagement in any procurement system in ensuring integrity, objectivity, and greater accountability in the whole procurement process. And to me, that's what really is important, and ensuring that there's open line of communications to continually do all of these engagements. And with that, I thank you all for giving me this space to share with you what we have been doing in the GPPB and the GPPB TSO. And thank you again for your kind attention. Good afternoon and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rowena. Very good presentation, and really congratulations for all the work and progress you have done in the Philippines. I mean, the last time I knew it was a year ago, and I see so much progress in terms of the data disclosure and dashboards. So really congratulations. I know that you have been a great champion behind this initiative. So congratulations for these great efforts. So we are almost over time, and we have 7 minutes left. So yeah, actually my alarm is ringing now. So what we will do is we'll take 2 questions that are posted on the chat box. These are from Brooke Horowitz. One question is for LKPP, and then Brooke is saying that he very much admired the MOOC online training program for SMEs. And he will be interested to learning more on how SMEs and how many women entrepreneurs are A, going through the training, and B, actually winning bids, if there is any information on actually the participation of women and their successful winning of the bids, and how UNDP can help you popularize the online training models. And the second question is for cost, Thailand and the Philippines, and is have the civil society observers and monitors in your countries ever exposed major examples of corruption, fraud, wrongdoing, and what has been the repercussions and how these cases have been handled? So these are not easy questions, especially the second one regarding the findings on corruption or wrongdoing. But if each of you can just have 1.5 minutes to address the questions as much as possible. So let's start, probably Clara, you want to start? With a question on observers or monitor exposing issues of corruption. Yeah, over to you, Clara, if you have any insights or reflections.
Yeah, for the first question that about the cost Thailand have the civil society observe and monitor in your country, and I will tell you exactly that for the Thailand that we have we have actually for the procurement, for the public procurement, we have two projects. The first one is going to be Cost Thailand, and another one is Integrity Pack. So for the cost of Thailand, we just only want the government agency to disclose for the data about that. I just mentioned that it should be 40 data, but for the this question you asked that how about the observer, or the observer can monitor that actually this is belong to the Integrity Pack. Integrity Pack project that the observer can help us to take a look, and when they find that corruption, and they tell us that this project is they find the corruption, and after that we will send report to the auditor like this. This is going to be the first question. ถูกแค่นี้ใช่ไหมแล้วก็ and another question is about the impact for the project that just as that I would like to say that for the government agency, if they think that the project should be transparency, it means that the project is clear, no corruption, and also they will finish maybe before the project done. This is going to be a good for the impact for the cost of Thailand, because they have someone take a look, and they have do project carefully and watch out, because they think that they have a citizen to take a look and watch out when you do something wrong is cannot. So this is a kind of a corruption. So it's going to be easy way and finish the job before the project done. It's going to be, that's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Kumpatarapon. I don't know if Clara wants to complement very briefly.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. So perhaps if I could reframe the question slightly, because I think very often we always focus on corruption and procurement, but I think more often than that, I think what we have done in our research in cost is to show that actually mismanagement and inefficiency are actually even greater causes of fiscal wastage. So I think especially if there is inefficiency and mismanagement, this actually creates the gray spaces for corruption to happen. So I think for us, it's not just about the corruption per se, which tends to be the ones that always drives the big headlines, but I think we also want to look in terms of the efficiency and the management of the procurement cycle, particularly in the performance of the contracts. And I think this is particularly where cost with the infrastructure data standard, with the disclosure of data, we're able to track where are the performance indicators of each of the projects, and by giving recommendations on to policymakers on how to improve the processes. And when you improve these process managements and improve the professionalization of the infrastructure sector, this actually reduces the occurrence of corruption. So I hope I answered this question. Yes, but actually in other countries, the cost process has actually detected major cases of fraud and wrongdoing. And this can be seen if you check out our cost website. There are a number of examples that have been highlighted globally there.
Yep, thank you, Clara. Very good. Then let's turn to Ms. Rowena from the same question, on the same line of the question.
Thank you for that question. I hope you're hearing me well. I think I want to focus instead on the value of the observer's report, not so much in finding direct relation from an actual corruption. In fact, in our legal system, the way it would work is that the report will be submitted to the ombudsman. The ombudsman will have to investigate it. Because as I guess most of us would have observed, a lot of really major corruption, they're really intricately embedded in the organization. It's not going to be as easy as having an observer's report show you evidence of corruption. What we're trying to do instead is that instead of escalating to a level of it being such a major corruption, we want to be able to engage everybody into collective action and use information that we can actually understand, readily understand. We can, not something very technical as what procurement tends to be, so that we can actually avoid it escalating to that level. So apart from the observer's report, I want to show as well a very recent instance where we have launched last year what we call the blacklisting portal. There we have posted all of the suppliers that have been blacklisted or not allowed to participate in public bidding. What happened was a journalist who was very, very good in researching noted that one of those blacklisted is actually in another portal that we have developed, which is the online GPPB online portal for our Bayanihan procurement. The Bayanihan procurement is the procurement that the law that allowed for procurement of COVID-19 related items. So that very dutiful journalist saw that there seems to be a similar or the same supplier that was already blacklisted, but was actually given contract, COVID related contract. So that journalist wrote to us, wrote to the agency, and what happened was the procuring entity terminated the contract on that basis. So as simple as that. So what we're trying to do is really to engage everybody. No, you don't really have to wait for it to be a major corruption case before we actually talk. And sometimes we can see trends. Now, I always say this, let's not wait for corruption to happen. We can look at trends. Trends is very, very important. You don't really have to wait for, because oftentimes, you know, criminal acts, criminal intent, they will not show, they don't have a similar face. What you would see would be red flags and trends. And that's what we're looking for. We would like you to help us look for those trends and red flags.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good answer to the question, and good example of the role of kind of a multi-stakeholder approach to tackle and prevent corruption, and not only focusing on the aftermath. Thank you, Mrs. Dewey. Over to you on engaging women and SMEs in procurement, how we can do better.
Yes, thank you, Diana, and also thank you for Brooke Horowitz for the question. Yeah. Actually, KPP already have the MOOC program, online training program, massive open online course, online training programs, not only for SME actually, but for all of procurement officer in Indonesia. As you know that Indonesia is very huge and need to increasing the capability of procurement officer. So MOOC is very helpful for us to building the capacity. Yeah? And in terms of MOOC for SMEs, we just launching that program. I think last month, if I'm not mistaken. That's this MOOC really for the SME. And regarding the data, actually, since MOOC for the SME is quite new, but before that MOOC, we also have training program for the SME. And every year, almost 500 SME follow this program. And among them, 100 is only less than 100, actually 86% from women. So it's not quite high for women for this training, for government procurement training. I hope that in terms of MOC, I think women invited to this program will be increasing. And how the UNDP helped Kpis to popularize MOC, I think the very fundamental idea is to find where the SMEs, so the group of SMEs is very difficult to find in Indonesia. So how to find the SME as a target of MOC. And regarding the data of how many entrepreneurs of SME joining in the public procurement, until now, we have actually 176,000 SME already engaged in government procurement in Indonesia, and that's 41% actually all of tendering entities. Yeah, so that's the data. I think for the next program, we hope that by MOOC online training program, it will be increase the capacity building of SME, and hopefully all of our development partners help us to promoting the SME in government procurement. Thank you. Back to you, Diana.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, with this, we have come to an end, and I really want to give a big applause to my panelists today, who I really learned a lot today from your presentations, and it's really great to see, and it's very inspiring to see so much progress happening in the region and led by women officials and champions on public procurement. So thank you so much, and I really also want to thank you, our participants that have been joining with great interest, I'm sure, the panel today. So with this, thank you so much, and we are moving back to Liviana. Over to you, Liviana.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. This has really been an inspiring session with a lot of interesting experiences from the ground and from our countries here. Now, actually, there is a short break. So we will start at 4:15 with the new session, session 3, which will focus on technology trends in service of transparent and open procurement. So that session, we really, for example, now we also discuss about open data and published data to make them accessible, to increase the citizens' participation. And in that session, we will delve a little bit more in depth on what are these technologies, how can this be used. But I don't steal more time from a break. Please come back at 4:15. Thank you.
Oh.